everyone, welcome to Game Dev Bits. I'm Temps, and today we're going to be dealing with a little bit of Unity 101. But first, as always, a huge thanks to my patrons. This is actually the first video since I've had my patrons, so please have a look. These are the wonderful people that are making all of this possible. So without further ado, let's dig in and learn the basics of Unity 2020. So first up, we have the hierarchy. These are the components, the pieces, the objects that make up your scene. Everything that's in your scene will appear in here, and if you open additional scenes, you'll see this header bar repeated. From here, what you can do is you can right-click and create an object. So we can create a cube. It automatically selects the name, ready for us to do it, and you can see a cube is over here. So there you go, that's our hierarchy. That's where we see all of the things that we need. When we select an object in the hierarchy, we can jump over here, and this is our inspector. So the inspector gives you a zoomed in view of the object that you're looking at. So each one of these sections with a little heading, that is a component that makes up a game object. Unity is a system built of components. So by default, we have a transform component that tells us where something is in the world, how it's rotated, and how big it is. So in these fields here, we can actually set these values to whatever we want to move it to 111, and you can even do math. So we can say, well, this one is actually 1, and we want to multiply that by 6, and he heads over there. So you can take a value that's in there and say, actually, what we want to do is we want to halve that. Next up, we have the mesh filter, which is just applying a mesh and actually putting it as an object into the world. So after you create the mesh filter, which brings it in, then you have a mesh renderer, and then we have a box collider. Any of these components can be switched off. So you can see here we switch off the mesh renderer, and the cube itself remains. So that is our inspector. Next up, we have the project view. The project view is where you'll find the assets, pieces, files that make up your project itself. So click on assets to expand that out, and you can see all of the assets that you've imported into your project. So nice and easy. We've got some assets we've already brought in, so character movement and a couple of things from Cinti. We automatically created a folder for a scene. I've created one for a script, and we can just easily right click and say we want to create a folder, and we got a brand new folder, empty icon to show there's nothing in there yet. And that's how we navigate through things. Now, some helpful things to do in here. What we can do is we can search for a word, and it will automatically find everything that matches that. If you select a folder first, you can actually select the folder and limit your search results to just what's in there. So what we can do is take our prefabs, come all the way down to props. We're viewing all of the props, and then we type in something like tray. And we're viewing things that match the word tray, but only in props. We can go up to the assets folder and find everything in there that contains tray. What we can also do is, from the top view, you can select search by type. So we can say, you know what, actually, I'd just like to see all of my scenes. Regardless of which folder they're in, there's all of the scenes that exist anywhere in our project. And you can just switch around those types to find the thing that you need. Most of the default Unity objects are in here, so it makes it nice and easy to go, actually, you know what, I don't know where something is, I'm going to jump in and find it. And you can save a search, give it a name, find our textures, and at any point in time we can go to materials, we can go to our textures, and we can save any search at all that we want. So we're going to create a new one, and we're going to call this ship search. So now we can go to our textures, we can come back to our search for ships, we can have our materials, we can jump around as we need. There we go. That's how you use the project browser. Now, next up we've got navigation. Key to navigation is, let's grab an object, grab our cube. All right, here we go. So we have a cube, we have the plane, and then we have our other cube. If we look at our navigation, what happens is our navigation, this is the blue area here, that tells us where our NavMesh agents are allowed to walk and where they can't. So you'll notice it cuts around this cube here, and if we click on that cube and go have a look at the inspector, it's marked as static. So static means we're telling Unity this object isn't going to move at all during the course of the game. But this one is not marked static, so we go to our navigation, he's there. But if we go out here and go static, so we mark that one in, go back to navigation, and then we can choose bake one more time, and now we've carved out an area around that cube as well. Now you'll notice obviously there's a bit that space we're talking about and it doesn't go here out to the edges. That's based on our agent here. So our agent radius is effectively what is the size of the thing that we're going to be running around the level. So we make that a little bit smaller and now our characters can get up closer. Here in the nav mesh settings, so obviously apart from the agent radius, we can change the agent height. Now the agent height will decide whether or not it can fit under something, so it'll actually do a test as well. So if we had another cube stretched across between these two, we can actually change our agent height to make that. So let's do that quickly now. So now when we bake, there's a little gap under there and our guy can't fit. So let's bring this up and make it a bit taller. Bake again, and now we can see it comes back. But if we change our agent height again and make him a little bit taller, he doesn't fit under there anymore. So your nav mesh will work in 3 dimensions and let you know where things can go. Next up to check, we're going to look at changing our orientation. So you'll notice our block is on a bit of an angle here. So we've got things rotated, but our move widget is lined up with the world. So if we switch this to local instead, you'll see that it lines up with the object itself. And that's just which space you're working in, which can make it easy to deal with something, or in some cases harder. So you'd want to use local rotation when you're trying to move something where it is, but you want to switch back to global rotation if you're moving something in relation to the world. And that way your X, Y, and Z axes stay exactly as they should be. Over here we have, this is the tool handle position. So by default, it sits on pivot. As you can see, the pivot point for this cube is right here in the center, and we'll pivot from there. The pivot point of our object is in the center, so if we switch from pivot to center, there's no change on this one. But what we'll do is we're going to create an empty game object, call it pivot. We want to line this up roughly with the end of our box. Then we're going to take this cube, and we'll attach it. Let's select our pivot object. Now, so on pivot, we're here. We're pivoting from the point of our pivot object. But if we switch that to center, even though we've still got the pivot selected, we're now rotating from in the middle here. And if we switch back to pivot, our guy is back at the other end. So we can use this to change for an object that comes in. For instance, characters will often have the pivot point at their feet. So you can choose to use that on center, or you can choose to use it at pivot to line them up with something. These are 2 of the default views or windows that Unity has ready for you to go. So we have scene. The scene view is, this is where you'll work. This is where you actually see your scene. This is where you look at the world. You'll notice things like lights have these gizmos. And this is where you can look at what's going on. So you'll see things like your nav mesh. The nav mesh shows as long as we have our navigation tab open. So we switch off that. There we go. The nav mesh goes away. Now this is our game view. The game view shows you what the final rendered version of your game will be. This is how the camera is going to render what's going on. So if we go over here and create a UI, so let's just create a canvas. We have our UI panel that appears over here. Our giant UI floating in the air. So we go back to our pivot. You notice that even though that UI is all the way up there, our game view shows that final piece. So we can have a look at that. And it keeps us on top of what's actually happening. You notice as we jumped around, I replaced the camera view before. So one of the things that Unity has to do is you can align something to where you're looking. So we move to where we want to see and go, you know what, this is a good view. Control-Shift-F, and our camera moves into the position that we're in. So our game view updates. And now even as we move around over here, our game view doesn't change. Now, align to view, that's that Control-Shift-F, works perfectly for things like cameras, but you can move absolutely anything. Create a new cube, sits right there. We can say, you know what, I'm just going to come in over here, select our new cube, Control-Shift-F, and then move back. And our cube has moved into the spot that we were. And now, just to show, look, let's grab something from our prefabs, say we want a character, and literally just drag that into the scene. Whatever else we want, we just need to drag them all in, one by one. All right, now the last thing we're going to touch on is a couple of quick hotkeys. So we've already seen Control-Shift-F to align things to where we are. So let's select the camera again, Control-Shift-F, align to our view. And I'm like, you know what? We'd like to see his face. So let's Control-Shift-F, and our game view shows the face. With an object selected, W selects the Move tool, E selects the Rotation tool, and R selects the Scale tool. So W, E, and R let you quickly jump around between these tools as you move things around the scene. Now, the last hotkey that I've got for you is simply how to move something to line up with something else. What we can do is hold down V, which is for vertex snap. So then we hold down V, we select a vertex that we want, and then if we point at any other vertex, we can line up our object to match. So instead of trying to orient to where something is, we can just hold down V, grab the bottom of our barrel, and then just point at this rock here. And here at the top of our cube, snap him right into place. And that's the basics of getting around in Unity.